Think you know the Bible? Think again. Tune in as Rabbi Bentzi Epstein and Tom Levine reveal the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary in Breakneck Through the Bible by Torch Dallas. Each episode may cover just a few verses, but don't let that fool you. Get ready to learn the Bible at a breakneck pace.
We are now starting chapter 6, page 31 in the Stone Chumash, Parshas Noach.
Wow.
So
okay.
This is a milestone.
A long slog.
Yes. We'll try not to get too wet during this. But okay, here we go. These are the offspring of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. Noah had begotten 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth had become corrupt before God, and the earth had become filled with robbery. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupted, for all the flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth.
Okay, so let's first start off. Verse 1 and 2 seem to be kind of a little bit out of order.
Now, just like when you say verse 1 and 2, are you saying like 9 and 10?
Sorry, yeah, verse 9 and 10.
Okay.
1 and 2 of Parshas Noach.
Yeah.
Yes, but chapter 6, verse 9 and verse 10, because verse 9 tells us these are the offsprings of Noach. Noach was a righteous man.
But didn't we learn last episode the offspring of Noah?
That what?
Who they were.
Who they were. So, but now we're starting Parshas Noach. So now we're getting into the story of Noach. Last episode, right, we went through who Noach was, right? And then he goes ahead and it was telling us, just as the 10 generations from Adam to Noach, just finishing up those 10 generations.
Okay.
So now we're getting into the story of Noach. And that was kind of like, we had the prologue of what's happening now. The world had become corrupted. People were bad. People were doing what they wanted. You had these rulers that were might makes right, king of the mountain, doing what they want, kind of just rolling over everybody, not really caring. And now you go ahead, and now we're going to get into the weeds of now what actually happens during Parshas Noach. So now the Torah is getting us into the story of Noach. And so it tells us that Noach, these are the generations of Noach. And I would have thought at that point in time, it would have said these are generations of Noach. Noach had 3 sons, Shem, Cham, and Yefes. And yet the Torah here doesn't say that. It says these are generations of Noach. Noach was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. With God did Noach go. Right? It's kind of, why is he telling me this whole thing about Noach when it starts with saying these are the generations of Noach?
Good.
So the Torah here is teaching us an unbelievable idea. Generally, when we think of generations, right, of these are the offsprings of a person, we tend to think of their physical offsprings, their children. But the Torah is telling you should know that children might be a physical manifestation of what we do. But there's lots of things that we create offspring so that we leave behind. And that's why the Torah says these are generations of Noach, right? The offsprings of Noach. Noach was a righteous man. It means the righteousness that Noach did in the world spread righteousness in the world. Right? And those were his offsprings. So we have to understand that we are continuously producing offsprings.
Through our behavior?
Through our behavior. Through our behavior or non-behavior.
Can we develop that idea a little bit more?
Sure.
I mean, clearly the physical offspring is easy to understand.
Right.
And we spoke of creating demons as a form of offspring.
Right.
Okay, I understand that. But you're saying that righteousness begets righteousness. Righteousness can be spread and is attributed as offspring to the individual?
Correct.
So just by being righteous, you are infusing righteousness into the world?
Correct. And those are your offsprings. It's not just that you're putting righteousness into the world, but you are actually creating offsprings. And in fact, it's kind of funny. I would tell you in one idea or in one way, it's even more yours than your children. Because when you create children, they have their own free will. Now our job is to mold them and to train them and to teach them to do righteousness. But ultimately, whether they're going to be righteous or not will fall into their own decision, what they want to do. Right? And so being righteous, your offsprings, when you put righteousness into the world, those are truly your offspring because they are truly you. Your children, right? They're going to have a piece of their own free will that's going to decide how they're going to act.
Can you give us an example of putting righteousness into the world, or of doing an act that creates righteousness?
Sure. Somebody comes to your door and says, I'm hungry. You say, well, come in and let me feed you. And you go and you feed them. You've done righteousness. You put righteousness into the world. Unbeknownst to you, this person who came to your door was literally starving and would have died if you didn't give them food. You gave them food. And now this person kind of continues on and kind of ends up winning the Nobel Peace Prize for medicine for the cure for cancer. So you now have an offspring of your righteous deed that actually becomes the conduit to saving the entire world from cancer.
Okay. So would you say there's a direct relationship between doing kindness and that's equating to doing righteousness?
Repeat the question.
Okay, so in that example of feeding a stranger, I would look at that as saying, well, that's an act of kindness.
Correct.
So my question is by doing kindness, is that a mechanism for infusing righteousness?
Yes.
Are there other ways besides doing kindness that puts righteousness into the world?
Sure. You go and you study Torah.
Okay.
You brought holiness into the world. You made the world a holier place. You've brought righteousness into the world. You brought light into the world.
Can you do that through prayer as well?
Sure. Okay. You brought righteousness into the world.
Okay, good.
You can do it through speech. Right? You speak kindly to people.
Good.
That might be kindness.
Yeah.
But the idea is that doing good or being godly, reflecting godly into the world is what brings righteousness. Right? And being righteous, being godly is what we strive for. So our job in this world comes to a point of being righteous.
Okay, good. That's very helpful. Thank you, Rabbi. But then why is it necessary in this verse that it says perfect in his generations? Why not just end with Noah was a righteous man, period?
Very good. What does it say? Why does it say in his generation? So this happens to be a fascinating discussion in the Talmud. What does it mean in his generation? So
you could actually back up a moment with the word perfect.
Okay.
On one hand it says, okay, Noah was righteous.
Correct.
Perfect in his generations. opposed to being just really good in his generations. He was perfect. Or am I reading too much into the word perfect?
No. So one sage says, even in his generation, when it was full of bad people, horrible people, because they're going to be destroyed, he was still righteous. He was still perfect, right? So that means an incredible person Noah was. Imagine if he would have lived at the times when there were righteous people. Imagine he lived in the generation of Abraham. How righteous he had Abraham as a role model, Abraham as a fellow tzaddik. Imagine how great he would have been.
That's interesting that you say that as an example, because what went through my mind was just the opposite. He was perfect in his generation because the bar was so low that had the bar been higher, maybe he wouldn't be so perfect.
Very good. That's the other opinion in the Talmud. Very good, Tom. I'm proud of you. You actually just said the opinion of the other rabbi in the Talmud.
The wrong ones.
No. It's actually a very, very big discussion in the Talmud. And I've thought about this a lot because you really need to stop and think for a moment. If the Torah tells you he's right, because the other opinion, the one that you said, was in his generation who was perfect compared to everybody else. The bar was so low. But he would have been in the generation of Abraham, he would have been just a regular Joe Schmo. Right?
Yeah.
So the question is, when the Torah tells you somebody is righteous, so why are you trying to read into this? That well, not really. What it's saying is in his generation is righteous, but in other generations he would not have been righteous. Why would you say something non-complimentary about somebody who the Torah says is a tzaddik?
Okay, that's a good question. I was thinking more in terms of self-actualization, of how do I look at myself as trying to become more righteous, and how much does the environment impact that? You know, what lesson can I take away to become more righteous? And I'm trying to learn from Noah. And was Noah's behavior that made the Torah say, that God say he was righteous because of the environment and the generation he was in? I'm just trying to take a lesson from this.
Well, the lesson is be righteous. How are we going to define righteousness? Are we going to measure it up against the people in our generation? That if they're bad, then, well, so the bar isn't so high to be righteous. I can
be just a little bit
better.
Less bad.
You know the joke. The two guys walking in the forest, and all of a sudden a bear comes out growling, and one guy sits down to put on his shoes, to tie on his sneakers. And the other guy says, "What are you doing?" And says, "You're not going to be able to outrun the bear." So the guy says, "You're right. But I don't need to outrun the bear. I just need to outrun you."
Good.
Right? So, okay, so everyone else is rotten. So I just need to be a little less rotten than them. I'm okay. Don't set the bar so low. Be as great as you can be.
Yeah.
But let's go back to my question, because I think my question is something that really behooves us to really think. And that is, why does the opinions that say that's no good, why do they go ahead and why do they say what the Torah clearly says he's a righteous person? What are they going ahead and saying, well, he really wasn't righteous?
Just a sec. So, but who is saying that?
The Torah. Well, the Talmud says by the Torah saying he was righteous in his generation, but that means to tell you, asterisk, shortened season, right? Baseball strike, right? It's telling you it's really not a record. So the Talmud is telling you when it says he was righteous in his generation, say, in his generation he was righteous, but another generation he wouldn't have been, just because the bar was so low.
Right. Because then you could question, why does the Torah even put in the words to begin with?
Correct.
Just leave it out. Just say he was
correct. And the question becomes that the Talmud, right, the Torah always teaches us, right, to give people the benefit of the doubt, right, if they're righteous, and the Torah is calling you righteous, then who are you to say that he really was not righteous?
Good.
And I'll tell you the real core, the answer to this, which is a fascinating, I think, lesson for us. The Talmud there's one big elephant in this room. And that elephant is, if Noach was so righteous, how could the world be destroyed on his watch? If you are righteous, you're taking responsibility, you have responsibility for the world. So how could the world ever be destroyed if you are truly righteous?
Well, we learn that there is a threshold of righteousness required to save the world.
Right.
Several times we see that one person alone isn't enough.
But somebody who's a truly righteous man would go ahead and would have to influence the world on some level to be righteous.
The whole relating back to our first topic, which was offspring, righteousness as an offspring.
Right.
So if you're putting off righteousness, your point is saying a perfectly righteous person is putting off enough righteousness into the world to save the world.
Correct. Or at least to influence enough people to save the world.
Yes. But Noah wasn't that person.
Noah wasn't that person. He was righteous enough to be saved, but he was not righteous enough to save the world. And therefore the sage says it can't mean that he was truly righteous, even in his generation, for sure, if it would have been in another generation, because then the world couldn't have been destroyed. But that the world was destroyed is the big fat elephant in the room. And I think that message really resounds loudly, rings out loudly in our ears, in our time. It means we look around at the world and there's a lot of evil in the world.
Mm-hmm. A lot.
Right? And what happens is that now we go ahead and what are we doing about it? We say, well, not my problem, not my monkey, and not my problem. I'm ready to let those people in those places take care of it. The answer is that if we are righteous, we are not putting out enough righteousness to bring the world where it needs to go. And on some level, we have a responsibility to do that. And we can't sort of pat ourselves on the shoulders and say, well, we're okay.
And we alluded earlier to the mechanisms to do that would be kindness, prayer, Torah study, all ways of injecting righteousness into the world.
Correct.
And so what we're saying is Noah was deficient in some of those areas. Yeah.
He didn't do it.
Yeah.
He's going to have 120 years to build an ark. How many people is he going to influence?
Right. Yeah. Do you think he knew? Like we know in our study that if he had influenced 10 people, he could have saved the world.
Right.
Do you think he knew that? Do you think if he had spent the 120 years instead of building the ark, even though he was commanded to build the ark, spending that time trying to infuse or I don't want to say create, but influence more righteous people, he wouldn't have needed the ark.
Correct.
Almost implying he didn't know that. What do you think?
It's a very good question. And I go back and forth in my mind that if I was Noah, would I have spent 120 years building an ark? Or would I would have said, heck no, I'm going to go and make sure we have 10 righteous people that are going to save the world. But if God put Noah into that place where he is the man to either save the world or not, I don't care how introverted you are. If God trusts you to do that, you can do it.
Sure. Okay, I buy that.
And it's funny because I look around at some of my colleagues, and some of them I would say they are not cut out for this job. Yet some of them are the most successful.
We can look at Moses with his speech impediment and all, and that supports exactly what you're saying.
Correct. Right? And therefore, our job, if God says, go build an ark because I'm going to destroy the world, we might want to stop and say, well, why is God destroying the world? And what can I do about it? And sort of, how do I make it happen? That there won't be a flood. Not that I made an ark so I could get away. Because our job isn't to survive. Our job is to make sure that we bring the world with us. And that's our job, to eradicate wickedness. The real way to eradicate wickedness is to turn them into righteous people, if possible. As the verse says, Yitamu Chata'im min haaretz, urisha'im od einam. And the verse literally means get rid of sins in the world and there'll be no more wicked people. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't say Yitamu chotim min ha'olam. Get rid of sinners from the world. It says get rid of sins and there'll be no more wicked people. If we're able to go ahead and to get rid of sins, right, of the wickedness that people do, that's our goal. That's what we need to do. And the Egyptians were drowned in the sea. Yay, we won, we got the other side, it's fantastic. The angels wanted to sing praise to God. And what does God tell the angels? Don't sing praise. These are my handiwork that died in the sea. What did God really want the outcome to be?
That they become righteous.
That they become righteous. What do we really want to see? That everyone wants to live a godly life. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we're shooting for. Everything else is just part of our play, and as we've talked about, right, these are the things that are happening to us for us to make those free will decisions. But ultimately, it's to bring righteousness into the world. And that's what we need to do. And to bring righteousness to the world.
Very good.
So righteous was Noah, righteous was he in his generation. Two ways to look at it. Fascinating.
Shall we pick up on verse 11?
Let's read, go read verse 11 again, yes.
Now the earth had become corrupt before God, and the earth had become filled with robbery.
It happens to be interesting. Do you know what the Hebrew word for robbery is?
No.
Hamas. But even to that, right? Our goal shouldn't be to kill them all, even though that's what they want to do to us. Our goal is to make them righteous. If we're not able to, then we have to get rid of them. Then we have no choice. But ultimately, our goal is for them to become righteous people. Right? And if we kind of keep that in mind, that that's really what we're trying to do. Right? We're trying to make them righteous, God-fearing people. So the world now has become filled with Hamas. Right?
Well, just a second. Let's build on that just for a moment. At what point is there the line of no return where we as a people, as a civilization, try and make them God-fearing? But at what point does your effort end and the realization is, okay, you got to wipe them out?
The answer is, I'm not sure it ever ends. But when they come to you to kill you, kill them. Mm-hmm. The Torah says, right, when somebody comes to kill you, you have to kill them. You're required to kill them. Right? And it becomes a fascinating, it's our obligation to do that.
Okay.
You know, what's interesting is the king of Amalek, and Amalek is a sworn enemy of the Jewish people. God says they and I can't exist, right? We have to eradicate Amalek. Who killed the king of Amalek? Was it King Saul? Was it the warriors? It wasn't. It was Samuel, the holy prophet himself, who killed him. Right? And ultimately, our job is to make people righteous. We have to understand that. But at a certain point in time, we run out of time.
Yeah.
And then we have no choice but to kill them.
Very good.
It's not a first, second, or third option, but it is our fourth option. It is the option on the table. And then we become obligated to do it. And it becomes a mitzvah to do. Who is the paradigm of this? Was King David. King David killed thousands and thousands of the Philistines.
Did you say Palestine? No, you said Philistines.
Philistines, yeah. We're no Palestinians. Remember, Palestinians is a made-up word. So King David went to kill the Philistines. And when it came time to build the temple, King David wanted to build the temple. And God says to him, King David, you can't build the temple. And King David says to God, why can't I build the temple? And God says, well, you have all this blood on your hands. So King David says, is there any person who I killed that I didn't kill because you wanted me to kill them? I did everything that you wanted me to do. And what does God say? God goes ahead and God says an amazing thing, saying, King David, you didn't understand me. When I said you had all this blood in your hands, what I meant was that the blood of the Philistines that you killed are in front of me like blood of the offerings on the altar. The peace offerings, the burnt offerings, the sin offerings on the altar. And the reason that you can't build the temple is because you are so holy and you are so great because you did those actions of killing the Philistines, that if you build the temple, it will never be able to be destroyed. And when the Jewish people sin, as I know they will, 410 years from now, and I'm going to take out my anger, and instead of destroying the Jewish people, I'm going to destroy the temple. I won't be able to because you will have built it.
Wow.
So King David, you cannot build my temple because it's not good for the Jewish people. Similar to what we find by Moses, right? Moses couldn't build a temple either because everything that Moses built, he was so spiritually great, it can never be destroyed. So King David, at that point in time, right, could not build the temple because he was so righteous.
So he had his son do it.
So his son did. And it's interesting, right? So King David went and stockpiled all the supplies. He bought the land, but he didn't build it. And it's interesting, King Solomon built it. And there's a discussion whether actually King Solomon didn't even use the supplies that King David had set aside and went and used his own supplies. And yet, who is the temple called? How is the temple referred to?
As King Solomon's temple.
No.
No?
As King David's temple.
King David's temple.
Right? It's interesting. We say in the grace after meals, Harachaman hu yakim lanu es sukkahs David hanofalas. Right? On Sukkot we say, may the merciful one, right, build for us the sukkah of David that fell. And the obvious question is that King David didn't build it. So why is it called the sukkah of David when Solomon built it? And the answer is because King David spiritually built it, even though King Solomon is the one who actually put it together. But it's called the House of David. And so he created the spiritual building, and physical building was done by King Solomon.
Very good.
Verse 12.
And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupted. For all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth.
Okay. What does it mean all flesh had become corrupted? Remember, animals don't have free will. Human beings, by the use of their free will, corrupt things. Animals don't have free will.
But they were copying
Ah,
what they saw from
human beings.
Yeah.
Right? And so what happened was all the animals, all the wild animals, all the birds were mating with different species. They were copying human beings. Right? And so, and how did they learn that bad behavior?
Observation.
Very good. Is that mankind was so bad that the animals learned from mankind. And that really is our job, to make sure that we don't corrupt, right, the animals, the world around us.
So how did God decide which animals came into the ark if they were all corrupted? Or
Say it again?
so when the animals came to the ark,
Yeah.
were they all corrupted animals at that point?
No, only the straight animals were allowed in the ark.
So not all, well, and just like not all people were corrupted, you still had Noah and his family,
Right.
and you had animals that weren't corrupted either, and those are the ones.
Correct. The ones from Antarctica. Right. The ones where there were no humans to corrupt them.
Okay.
And in fact, even the earth became corrupted. You would plant wheat and it would sprout barley. You plant barley, it would sprout oats. We had created such a decadence in society that we had, and was infiltrated, but we had
It permeated.
permeated the entire world, that animals became like this, even the dirt became like this.
Wow.
I'll tell you an interesting story. I would say funny, but it's sad. In the olden days, there was a magazine called U.S. News and World Report. And I used to read it, and that kind of like, it was like a weekly summary of kind of what was going on. And they once had an article in there, one-page article, about the gray wolves in Canada. And the researchers are writing like how this is great. You know, the gray wolves, they're one of the monogamous species. They stick to their own. And he writes in his article, so they went, on this expedition to go into check up on them and kind of and follow them and see what's going on. And what happened was that they were in the middle of this expedition, kind of going ahead and watching these animals. And in the middle of the night, one male and one female, not his mate, went slinking off from the group. Like hanky-panky.
Mm-hmm.
And he writes in the article, chuckle, chuckle, chuckle. And all I can think of was Parshas Noach. That this is exactly what happened in the times of Noach. That mankind had become so corrupt, and we had corrupted everything around us, that even the animals learned from what we did. And they went ahead and they created this mess.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Verse 13. God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with robbery through them. And behold, I am about to destroy them from the earth."
Okay, so what was like, call it the straw that broke the camel's back? What was the main piece that caused God to say, "I'm going to destroy the world"? It was stealing. That people were stealing one from the other.
Now, do you think the stealing, was that stealing people, or was that stealing possessions, or did it didn't matter?
Yes. It's taking something that's not yours.
Okay.
Or it's getting to a place where I can't get along with another human being in this world. We're going to see in the Torah, as we go through this, that unity is so crucial. And unity has so much potential to protect. Right? In Parshas Noach, there are two big stories. The story of Noach and the flood, and the story of the Tower of Babel. They actually fight a tower to go fight God. And we read these two stories, and if I was to ask you which one is worse, building a tower to fight God or stealing from each other, what would you say?
Stealing from each other.
Right, but we say fighting God, right, is like that's horrific.
But we also learn that behavior of man to man often is, I don't want to say more important, but as seen by God to be higher.
How we treat our fellow man.
Yeah.
Right, so you've just been around too long, Tom. Right, but you go to the average person in the street, say, which one's worse, building a tower to fight God or stealing from somebody?
Yeah.
I say, building a tower to fight God. That's the ultimate, insult. Right? Ultimate rejection of God. And here, we go ahead and the punishments for stealing is everyone gets wiped out. The punishments for building a tower is we get spread out over the world. And the reason is because when you can't get along with each other, right? When you're going ahead and you're busy just hanging out with, just chopping each other down, just cutting each other down. Right? So then at that point in time, it's kind of like, it doesn't work.
So let me just, 13, God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with robbery through them, and behold, I am about to destroy them from the earth. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make the ark with compartments and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you should make it. 300 cubits the length of the ark, 50 cubits its width, and 30 cubits its height.
Okay, go ahead and continue reading.
A window you shall make for the ark, and to a cubit finish it from above. Put the entrance of the ark on its side. Make it with bottom, second, and third decks.
Okay. Good. So a couple questions here. Number one is, why does God make Noah have to labor for 120 years to build the ark? Meaning, could God just have easily tell Noah, take a can of spray paint a football field size, and when the time comes, I'll make a magic carpet and I'll float you up in the sky? Could God have done that?
Sure.
In many ways, God could have saved Noah and his wife. Why does God want Noah to spend 120 years building an ark that anyway could only be kept in place or could only survive by miracles?
Yeah. So great question. Was God hoping Noah would, in that time span, convert people to righteousness? Was that?
So God was telling Noah, go build an ark so the world can see you building an ark.
And ask why.
And Noah would say, well, there's going to be a flood because you're all wicked and you better change your actions. And so for 120 years, Noah labors to build an ark so the whole world can see what is going on, and the whole world could hopefully learn from that and change their behavior and become righteous.
So the fact that didn't happen, is that an indictment on Noah in that did he not try, or was the world so wicked that he was just unsuccessful in that? Did you kind of hear what I mean?
Yeah. It's a good question. Great question. And we're going to see that the flood water is going to be referred to as the flood waters of Noah. Which means whether he didn't try hard enough, or whether he just built the ark and didn't try it, then at that point in time, in either way, he bears responsibility. And that goes back to righteous was he in his generation. So if he has that responsibility, so only in his generation is he considered righteous, but not outside.
Do we see that Noah is punished? Well, we do, but interesting. Well, I mean, I've always learned that, and we'll get to it, that Noah's punishment was because he didn't build a place of Torah study after the flood. But
what? Noah was punished. He finished the flood and he walks out and there's nothing there. And you live in a world where there's nothing there. Can you imagine waking up tomorrow and Dallas is gone? Nothing there? Can you imagine such a thing?
No, but didn't God tell Noah that's what's going to happen?
Yeah. That was the greatest punishment. Can you imagine your neighbors, your city, your state, your country, every country gone? The only living creatures left in the world are on your boat? Can you imagine a punishment worse than that?
It's pretty extreme.
Very, very.
Yeah.
Devastating. Devastating.
Okay.
So there were 3 floors on the ark.
Yeah.
Why 3 floors? So the 3 floors was the top floor was where Noah and his family lived. The second floor was where all the animals were. And the third floor, the bottom floor, was where all the garbage went.
Garbage, where would the supplies? Would that be on the top floor?
So the supplies, I think, were either on the bottom floor.
Okay.
And as they fed them to the animals, and the animals kind of pooped them out, they went back to the bottom floor as
waste.
As waste. Because animals had to bring all the seeds, right, for the world to be planted on the ark. And in the third floor, the top floor, also there's plenty of room, right? So there could be a lot of things on the top floor as well. But I really think they were on the bottom floor.
Why do you think the Torah is telling us the dimensions of the ark?
So the dimensions of the ark, right? It's 300 cubits, the length, 50 its width, and 30 its height, right? So if a cubit is roughly 21 and a half inches, so close is 1.75 feet, probably close to 2 feet. Let's just use 2 feet because just the math is just easier, right? So it's 600 feet long, right? It's 600 feet long. It's 100 feet wide and 30 cubits its height. And how big is a football field? Football field is 100 yards. 100 yards is 330 feet, right? So by football field and a half. Right?
No matter what its dimensions, it still would require a miracle to accommodate
all
everything.
The animals. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. There's no everything.
To your point earlier, it could have been half that size, and it really wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, how was it built? Was it built as a square box? Or was it more like a boat? And like the stern to
there's some
bow to stern, right, with tapering and all that. Right? And then also it's interesting because nowhere is he told to make like a box. Right? No talk about a rudder on the boat. Mm-hmm. He wasn't steering. Right? Who was steering it? It was all God.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, if you look in verse 16, right, it says, "Tzohar should you make for your teva," right? For the ark.
Is that a window?
So there are 2 opinions what the word tzohar is. Either a window or like a precious gem that gave off light. Because remember, a window for light wasn't too helpful because the whole year it was dusk outside. not night, not day, dusk. So I'm not imagining there was a lot of light outside.
And do we learn that the ark was on the water for a year?
Yes.
Oh.
We'll come to that.
Okay.
Now, really what's also interesting is, so the word sohar has two meanings. A window or like a precious stone that glowed. Now, what's interesting is that everyone agrees there was a window on the ark. How do we know there was a window on the ark?
Because the bird?
Because when Noah at the end is told to open up the window and let the bird out, you see everyone agrees there was a window. So why is there an opinion that it was a precious stone and not a window? So if you think about it, there's a very interesting question. When you are righteous, when wickedness gets destroyed, are we allowed to see it? Are people allowed to see wickedness getting destroyed? And the answer is, it depends. If you are truly righteous, then you can see the wicked getting destroyed. If you are not truly righteous, then you cannot see the wicked being destroyed.
But in Sodom and Gomorrah, we were directed not to.
And Lot was directed not to look.
Just Lot?
Lot and his family. And his wife turned around and looked, and she turned into a pillar of salt. So you see that that's going to be later on. And you see that they had merit to be saved, but not to see the destruction of the wicked. So now, was Noah truly righteous, or was he only righteous in his generation? So according to opinion, he was truly righteous. He could have a window. He could see them all being destroyed. According to the opinion that he was only righteous in his generation, so he kind of just made it in, but really he was just better than them, but was not a tzaddik in the time of Abraham. He would have been just like a regular Joe. So then he couldn't have a window, because he couldn't see the destruction of the wicked. So therefore it must be then that the word Torah doesn't mean a window, but it means a stone that gave off light. One more idea I want to share with you. Mm-hmm. The word sohar, which means window, mean a light. If you change the second and third letter around, what do you get? You get the word sarah. What does the word sarah mean? The word sarah is like tsaras, like problems, like difficulties. And the Torah is telling us an amazing idea. When a person has a tzara, when a person has a challenge, nothing is just by happenstance. Everything comes from God. So when a person has a tzara, when they have a pain, the Torah is telling you, take your tzohar, take your light, shine it on the pain, and you will create a tzohar. You'll create a window to escape that pain.
Uh-huh. Wow.
And every time God gives us a challenge, what he's doing is he's pointing us in a certain direction. And we get pointed in a certain direction at that point in time. As we examine that, that will give us what we need in order to get out of it. And that's what it's called, a tzara.
Rabbi, thank you. That was a great episode.
Yes, thank you, Tom.
And we will look forward to picking up Noah next podcast.
Looking forward. Thank you, Tom.
You've been listening to Breakneck Through the Bible by Torch Dallas. Visit torchdallas.net for more mind-expanding episodes that will forever change how you read the Bible.